I'm Instructor Jason, one of the instructors at Krav Maga Self-Defense. We all practice different finishing modes. We get off the channel, create distance, and scan around. We scan around to either find an escape and get away or pick up a common object to arm ourselves if we can't escape and there are more problems that we have to deal with. Generally speaking, finishing modes vary uh, depending if you are civilian, law enforcement, or military. Civilians like us are mostly concerned with getting away with minimal to no injuries or damage to ourselves. We usually say law enforcement finishing mode would need to take control of the situation and effect an arrest. And for the military, because of the context of combat, to neutralize the combatant by killing, generally speaking. In modern times, I would dare say sometimes it can switch between the two. There are times where police are faced with imminent danger to themselves, to their lives, or to someone else, and they have to shoot the aggressor, which may result in a fatality. And there are a lot of peacekeeping missions now for the military, and they find themselves doing operations closer to what law enforcement does than actual combat. Of course, we will talk more about what we, civilians, are likely to do for our finishing mode. So, usual go to escape, right? So, you'll hear a lot of systems that would say run away, escape, usually post incident. And that's true, since the best defense is distance, and you want to get away from the aggressor. But if we take a deeper look, there are some things you need to consider depending on the situation and environment. If you manage to apply some techniques and cause the aggressor some harm, just enough to stun them, let's say an example like they're doing a knife threat, they're holding a knife threatening you, and you choose to apply one of our defensive techniques, and you do just enough to stun them and you get away, then, and they're still sort of, they're not, they're wobbly, they're a bit hazy, but still sort of like conscious and so stunned, then you can deem that as sort of acceptable to be able to just leave and go home, right? But there are some things to consider. So, if someone is out there armed with a knife looking to victimize people, um, an option for you is to not leave it like that. You can still find a safe, well populated place so you can call the police, notify the police. Someone's out there with a knife victimizing people, and you were already victimized. You just managed to get away. And when you say safe area, what are, let's say, in the urban setting, it can be a well-populated, open public area. So they'll be hesitant to follow you because, oh, there's a lot of witnesses here. And there's a lot of people there who you can ask help from. Or a well-populated shop slash restaurant that you can go inside. You can ask help from staff. They'll be hesitant to follow you too because there's a lot of people, a lot of witnesses, and in a way, even though you've kind of cornered yourself inside the shop, it can be defensible because you can lock the door or jam the door. You have that barrier between you and the aggressor if they try to follow you, right? Um, and of course, in the rural area, it's a little more difficult, but you have to find a similar sort of safe place. You can get in your car, drive off. You have that barrier to protect you in the car. You can go off to a neighbor, someone you know, the town center, maybe. It depends on the distance. But ultimately, you, you still have that option, and might be the right thing because to notify police that this has happened, this is what you've done to get away, and there's still someone out there that's armed and victimizing people, committing offenses. But you have to also look out for yourself and find a safe place first where you can then sort of settle down, stop running or stop escaping, and then change mode to calling for help, call 000, call for police. Another thing to consider, if you've done heavy, maybe serious injuries to the aggressor while defending yourself, and when you've escaped, they're unconscious, they're immobilized, they're down on the floor, and you don't know if they're actually fully conscious or if they're breathing, maybe. And you definitely should consider calling the police. I still say police over ambulance because that person could still be armed, could still be aggressive, and you'd want the police can radio in for ambos anyway, but you want them to come in and secure that person, secure that situation first. And yeah, once that's done, if some things to consider though, if you don't, then you just leave. That kind of deteriorates. It makes the situation less sort of. I'm looking for a term here. Um, Less favorable for your post-incident stuff, right? Regardless if you were defending yourself. It's not necessarily duty of care, but that is kind of your doing, even though you were defending yourself, and you do want to. Um, you don't want to kill the person or permanently injure the person. So you still want to, if you've done enough damage where they're really down and immobilized, then you want to kind of look after them and ask for emergency services. They're urban setting or in the city center type of place. Other people might see it, and then you can ask for help. They can call, but you still want to sort of be sure that you're secure and safe. You can students asked me before, I said, well, you can be a block away and still be able to have a visual on them while you call police or call for help. Or in the earlier context that I said, you could come into a shop that's nearby. But I think the point being is it's now changed. You've defended yourself maybe a little too well, and you have to get them help, get them some medical help too. And of course, ideally, I this one I will outright recommend. Maybe get the police involved because they can then secure that person, secure any weapon involved, and then call the paramedics for that person. They can apply first aid too if needed. And yeah, if common objects are involved, so it's an option to escape with it. You think if you think they'll follow you or persist in attacking you, you can still hold on to that common object as you flee, as you escape or leave the area. You can always put it away at a later time, or when you think you're safe. You can, yeah, not need that common object anymore. If you pick up a stick or milk crate, although I don't see much milk crates around the city anymore, but yeah, whatever common object you get. But some things to consider though, like earlier, if you manage to um, put in heavy injuries or close to serious or close to serious damage to your aggressor with that common object, and they're immobilized, they're down on the ground, unconscious, and you don't want to go near to check if they're breathing, then it would be a good idea to call police, so he can get the medical help that he needs. Police first, because already shown aggression, you want them, as we said earlier, you want them to secure the aggressor or any weapons that he has, um, before treating them. Um, and of course, that post incident, you definitely be involved in a police investigation. The decision they make is up to them, but you'll probably have to make a statement, and they'd be very interested in seizing that common object that you've used, regardless if you're facing assault charges or they'll deem it as self-defense. That's now part of sort of an exhibit for their case, for the investigation. So that's not part of the evidence. So you definitely want to, don't have to hold it the whole time, but have it nearby, or remember where you've placed that common object that you've used, because they will be looking for that. That's another thing to consider. And if you're going into a shop to seek refuge, you can always put it outside on the footpath, right next to the door or the windowsill. You still know where it is. No one's gonna pick. Not, the likelihood of people picking it up and taking it is quite low. So when referred to later on, where's that stick that you used? Oh, it's over here, and you can produce it. And yeah, just have the capacity to produce it. Another thing to consider on finishing mode, which can be a bit tricky, is if they've used a weapon, right? If they've used a knife or a firearm on you, although in Australia, likelihood of that is quite low, but in other countries maybe. And of course, we do practice firearm threat techniques in the higher levels. Of course, there's levels for the knife threats and all those. And you've managed to defend yourself well. They're down, they're immobilized. Do you seize that weapon? Do you feel a little more, it's your choice ultimately? There's no pressure on either way, because one, you can seize the weapon and give it to police later on, because you don't want that person roaming around with a knife or a firearm. But the issue you have to consider then is while you're transporting that weapon. You don't want to walk around with just holding a knife, because then the population will think you're the bad guy, you're the bad person now, because you're walking around with a knife. If you had some sort of capacity to carry it concealed in some sort of opaque or closed bag, um, I guess you can choose to do so, and I guess I'll emphasize this, it's your choice. Firearm too. Like, if you feel that you don't want that person running around with a live firearm, depending on your handling skills, then or if you have capacity to, if you choose to do it, to seize that weapon, capacity to leave it in the car or in the boot, and where it doesn't jiggle much or doesn't drop or go off. If you don't know how to render it safe, um, drive straight to police station and say, there's a firearm in my car. That's a possible scenario, but you can also choose not to. So it's your choice. But I just put this in here because that is another option, thinking about it. Do you seize the weapon or leave it with that person? But if you do leave with that person, I think the faster you get to a safe place where you can call for help, call police, especially firearm, they will definitely prioritize that call, because there's someone out there with a firearm victimizing people in town. They will definitely, every available car will show up to deal with that. But it's there. If you do choose to seize that weapon so that aggressor can't continue to use it, you have to consider how you handle it too. This might be more lower in the priority. Of course, I really want you, if you choose to do that, it would be best if you can transport it in some sort of concealed way maybe in your backpack or anything. Not that it's advisable, but it's your choice. It's your choice. It can be done if you choose. Um, you can carry it in a way where you don't, you minimize affecting the DNA and fingerprint evidence on it. All right. So just to be clear, that last aspect, if your aggressor does have some sort of weapon, you manage to defend yourself, you can still apply what we just previously talked about. You can escape, find a safe place. Of course, it's the likelihood of calling police being the right thing is sort of higher, so they can deal with that. But the choice is yours too. If you choose to seize that weapon and take it with you, there's all these other steps that you have to consider in doing to make sure you don't complicate the situation, especially with the firearm. Yeah, because it's all a high stress situation. They can easily, people or the police can easily make the mistake of thinking you're the aggressor. So you have to be clear as well when you call, or be not in a position where you're actually holding it. Like, where is it? I put it in the boot of my car, or here it's in my bag, or it's in this bag. All those things. Just something to think about. So yeah, so we're just looking deeper into the finishing modes. Of course, that kind of falls into post-incident stuff as well, like what we talked about. You will have some trauma after that post-incident. You might have to be involved in a police investigation where you give a witness statement. We'll talk more about that. That's one of the topics we have lined up. Um, but you you can't just blindly leave. There's some things you have to consider, especially after you've done your defensive techniques. How much damage have you done to that aggressor? What's their status now? If you've done pretty much good damage where they're down on the ground and everything, then you have to consider getting help for that person too. Um, because it's not a combat situation where it's not kill or be killed. Um, we're still in a very civilized society, and I think there may be some more complicated repercussions if you don't alert the authorities to what's happened. So in a way, it's still your choice, but it's looking like the safe side is if you've knocked them out, they're on the ground, or they may have hit their head on the ground on the way when you knock them out. They're on the then definitely want to seek some medical help for that person, and other stuff will fall into place too. Did you use a common object? You might want to keep that around, keep it handy. Later on, you might have to produce it or point out where you've put it. If it's if it's become if the injuries you've inflicted are sort of that bad, you just can never tell what police will want to do with their investigation. And yeah, if your aggressor has a weapon, you leave it. Your choice too. Do you leave it? Do you seize it from them just to prevent them from causing more harm? If you do choose to seize it, then there's a few more things you have to consider in handling it and traveling with it as you're trying to get help. If you do leave it, then of course definitely need it would be a good thing to call police as soon as possible. Of course, prioritize getting to a safe place so you can do that, because you can then have them deal with that situation. So yeah, it's not as I know we can get carried away in class and everything where we simulate running away to an exit and everything, but this is a good exercise to just have a think. It's not just simply running away, escaping, and going home. There's some things we may have to do because as a result of our actions. If we've defended ourselves too well, I think we should consider getting help for that person or sticking around for the post incident because it would be wise, in a way, defending yourself as well to alert the authorities of what happened, just so everything's clear and to minimize any confusion or assumptions that could have happened. To learn more KMG self defense techniques, train with us at Krav Maga selfdefense.com.au.